Do you have any idea how shocked and excited I was when I saw the first advertisements for Actraiser Renaissance? I thought this series was long since dead. Look, I loved the original Actraiser on the SNES, but the game is a tough sell. You have city building mashed up with action platforming. This creates a unique formula, but muddies the consumer appeal. And Actraiser 2 actually eliminated this city building aspect entirely and focused on the action platforming. And while Actraiser 2 wasn't bad per se, it just didn't feel like Actraiser, since the first game left such a solid impression on me. Renaissance is a return to form, and it takes that original unique formula of Actraiser 1 and combines it with some more modern ideas and designs. Let's talk about the aesthetics. For better or for worse, the first thing most people notice about Renaissance is the art style. The original game had sort of a 16-bit SNES graphical style that was satisfactory and unlikely to ruffle any feathers. Renaissance went from this to
お目覚めになりましたか、神様?
This art style could be a positive or a negative, depending on your tastes, but the platforming sequences don't really continue this art direction, and in some ways you could argue the game's art is a little bit all over the place. For me, I didn't mind it, nor would I praise it, and I highly recommend looking into the gameplay itself before making any final judgments, since Actraiser Renaissance offers a gameplay experience unlike any other. As mentioned before, the original Actraiser has two major aspects in its game design: city building and action platforming. Renaissance continues and expands upon this. Let's start with the city building aspect. You'll be directing your village's expansion and fighting off flying demons to protect your people. More people means more worshippers, which means more power for your character. There's multiple things to pay attention to and juggle, which makes for a fun spinning plate sort of design that starts out hectic and gradually calms down. This game has a habit of interrupting you with village story points, which can be annoying, and this is especially egregious in the first village. Not only are we being stopped for plot points, they also want to give us tutorials on everything. I definitely wish they spaced these out better, or made them quick pop-ups or something, but instead it's all done through cutscenes and conversations. The silver lining is that this lightens up as the game goes on, and you'll eventually only be interrupted for story aspects since the tutorials are front-loaded. Okay, so we'll just head out. Yeah, I see it. Monster lairs are a present danger to your village, and an interesting change was made to them. In the original, you simply lead your villagers to the lair, and they do a quick little animation before zapping the lair out of existence. In Renaissance, you'll dive into the lair yourself for a single-room action sequence. I found these to be a nice palette cleanser from the expanded City Sim segments, and they gradually get more and more difficult as you progress through the game. Renaissance's biggest addition to the city sim are sieges. Sieges task you with defending your village from monsters, but you can't use your angel's bow and arrow. You'll be using champions, which are story characters you pick up along the way, defensive structures, and the occasional miracles from your angel, which basically function as damage AoEs with varying effects and damage types. This is a much more involved application of Actraiser's village aspect, and for me, it was a welcome addition. I think all of these sieges had some really interesting strategy and tactics involved, and were enjoyable for the most part. I will say, though, that the number and difficulty of sieges might be a bit much for those that aren't so enamored with them. I think some sieges could have been made optional for extra XP or something, and it would have been a good idea to have a difficulty setting for sieges specifically. Currently, difficulty only affects action platforming sequences. In these sieges, damage types of your champions and buildings are a key component. Different enemies are vulnerable to different damage types. I essentially found myself going into every mission with a very balanced group of damage types in my heroes and buildings, and only deviating from this repeated strategy if I failed miserably. So, for example, I'd have one ranged physical, one magic, and one melee to cover all my bases. In my opinion, this isn't ideal, and the developers should have given us some sort of scouting summary for the sieges before we start, so that we can make educated decisions before the battle, instead of having to just blindly rush into the mission, fail, and then adjust next time. Without the trial and error aspect, I think the strategy of these sieges is interesting, without being too convoluted, and makes for an enjoyable challenge. When you're not playing Mayor and Commander-in-Chief, you'll be traipsing through various locales and vanquishing assorted evils and wildlife. Renaissance expands on your character's moveset from the first game pretty significantly without overcomplicating things. We have a lot more magic spells to acquire and use, and they have varying MP costs. Our movement is also a lot less clunky, and we don't have awkward restrictions like how in Actraiser 1 you couldn't attack in midair after you fell a certain distance. Anyway, notable additions include a backdash, an uppercut move, and a helm breaker of sorts. All of these have invincibility and allow you to play much more fast and loose than you could in the original game. Thankfully, the game's bosses and enemies have been adjusted to be in line with your newfound capabilities, if you play on hard. Now, I'm not one to argue that playing on the hardest difficulty always gives the best experience. I think that depends a lot on the game and what interests the individual player. That being said, Renaissance on normal runs into the issue of not really requiring you to use your full moveset or the invincibility of certain moves, since your basic combo will obliterate most enemies quickly enough, and getting hit just isn't that penalizing. I found myself just blowing through the game without a need for using magic or my backdash much at all, except for boss fights and the occasional skeleton dragon knight level enemies. On hard, you'll definitely pay more attention to how you approach enemies in a level and spend your resources. For those reasons, I highly recommend trying out the game on hard. With all that said, Renaissance does a great job with its levels and maintains its arcadey action game feel. The level design hits the sweet spot of not too long and not too short, and the bosses are much more interesting than their original counterparts without being overly complicated or punishing. Also, the ability to change magic on the fly allows you to adapt to situations without having prior knowledge of the level itself. While Actraiser Renaissance is decidedly different from the original Actraiser on SNES, I think that it gives a new and better overall experience while still being faithful to the first game. It expands on the original's formula in such a way that gave me more of what I loved about the original Actraiser. If the city sim aspect sounds like a complete chore for you, it might be better that you avoid Renaissance, since you'll be spending half of your time on it, maybe more depending on your success rate. On the other hand, if action platforming isn't really your thing, you could set the game to easy and breeze through any action segments without much worry and infinite lives. Thank you so much for watching this review. I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/BeamonTV, link is in the description. If you'd like to know when I upload videos, click subscribe and the little bell icon to get notifications. Thank you so much. Have a good one.